At the beginning of January 2016, I attended the MeCCSA Conference in Canterbury on behalf of the DRIVE project to present some of the thinking behind the work that we were doing to other colleagues working in the area of media and cultural studies and communication studies. One of the things that I addressed was something we've talked about since the beginning of this project, and that is around how we might, through the work of bringing together narrative and science, start to dismantle the hierarchical system of different kinds of knowledges that places certain types of knowledge at a higher status than other types of knowledge. And one of the problems with that hierarchical system is that it divides the participants in these interactions very clearly into knowledge producers, so those would be the academics, the researchers, knowledge implementers, and by that we might think of policymakers and agencies, government agencies, those kinds of actors in the system, and knowledge consumers, which are the public or the businesses who are affected by these water decisions. And it very clearly divides people into those kinds of categories. So one of the things we're trying to dismantle is not only the hierarchy of knowledge, but actually to blur the boundaries between those particular roles, so that people who are perhaps perceived of as knowledge consumers are also seen as knowledge producers and knowledge implementers themselves, and vice versa. One of the things we're looking at in terms of storytelling is, as we've said before, about storytelling as its own epistemology, as its own way of knowing about stuff, and something that makes storytelling unique as a way of understanding ideas and facts in a very different way to other kinds of knowledge systems. So it's the idea of storytelling as a knowledge system. But the other idea I wanted to introduce here is the idea of storytelling as a process. So storytelling itself is a series of negotiations and of testing of ideas. So it's not simply about an embodiment of just a different set of facts. It can be used as a means to create the very dialogue that we want to create between narrative and science. So it's both storytelling in its own right as a way of knowing, but also storytelling as a way of facilitating the discussion between science and storytelling. So for example, we might look at this particular graph that James Blake has provided for us around precipitation levels, and one of the questions we might ask is, what are the stories that lie behind this particular set of scientific data, and what is the process by which the storytelling enables these two sets of data, the scientific data and the storytelling data, to speak to each other. And in a sense, I was reflecting on this and thinking that DRY as a project itself is itself all about process. It's an iterative project. So things will emerge and change as we engage with communities, with stakeholders around how the project develops. And that's partly because it's a project that relies on co-design. It relies on the participation of stakeholders and participants in order to shape the project, to determine the direction of where the research is going. It's about processes of discussion, of debate and negotiation, which reflects in itself the uncertainty and instability of the whole issue of drought and water scarcity, and indeed the wider issues of climate change. It's about different knowledges coming together in a new process itself of knowledge production. So thinking about that, what we're talking about here is a transition from knowledge hierarchies to a knowledge forum. a forum where different debates can happen in a constructive and creative way that itself generates new insights and new knowledge.